This is a real treat. We're going to try to get this out as a complete file. This is for Global Wall Street and for the quants out there. And you know that, Paul, because when he walks into the studio in the black T-shirt,
yep.
I mean, you know, the guy is so large, he doesn't need a suit and tie.
I know.
And Jan Szilagyi joins us right now, studying under Rogoff and Schliefer at Harvard in Harvard Economics, wandered over and did a tour of duty with Stan Druckenmiller, and joins us now on how people are starting to change AI thinking. This is a huge deal for Jamie Dimon. It's a huge deal for someone like Howard Marks as well. Jan, thank you so much for joining Surveillance. We're not going to turn this into a history lesson, but the bottom line is at LSE in the 50s, Karl Popper sat with a young student named George Soros and said, the way we think about history, the way we digest past tense data is maybe not as productive as it could be with something called reflexivity, which is a different approach. If AI is about a large language model data dump, how are we going to move artificial intelligence onto what Soros and Popper were talking about?
That's a great question. First of all, thank you for having me on the show. I think as what we're seeing currently, what is really exciting about the technology that we're witnessing right in front of us is that it has this capability to digest huge amounts of data and start to make sense of it, help us make sense of it. And I think that we have always looked to the past to try to understand the future because that's the only data that we had.
Right.
And what is different this time versus before is that we seem to have been accumulating more and more data, but didn't have increased bandwidth to process it. In my mind, AI is going to resolve this.
Okay, AI is going to resolve it, but it's just nothing more than a richer, deeper back test. Everybody did back tests on a difference equation. We went back to T-1 or T-20, whatever. Is AI going to change how Global Wall Street, the pros listening to the show, how they back test?
It is going to change it because actually I'll let you know that the experience that we have had, so Reflexivity platform is used by a number of top hedge funds. And what we have found as they start to incorporate this into their workflow is that they are amazed by the speed with which the system is able to answer their questions by going straight to the data. In fact, often they run out of questions because you were not used to being able to tap into the data so powerfully and so quickly. And so we seem to now be limited only by our imagination. So the way I think about AI helping investors on Wall Street is giving them this superpower where they can keep thinking about scenarios that could unfold and have the AI back that up or dispute it through the data. It's a very objective arbiter.
Can you give us, and this is so new to so many of us, our listeners, our viewers, what is a typical query that you would get from an investor client that maybe AI could be helpful with?
Well, it started with things that were extremely basic in nature. Somebody might just say like, oh, you know, I'd like to really understand if when somebody talks about the inverted yield curve, how accurate has that actually been in predicting recessions? It then became a lot more complex when you might say, look at all of financials for a specific company, be it Tesla, Microsoft, JP Morgan, whatever. Tell me what is the market not appreciating? And suddenly it's pulling together things it's able to glean from endless reports, news outlets, and financials and say, well, actually, here are some parts of the business that are growing extremely fast, but get no mention from the analysts. And so you could have a re-rating. The dream here is that, and this is what Reflexivity purports to do, is if you were the first to know that AWS was going to be a big deal for Amazon, you would have made a lot of money.
Wow. So this is such an amazing part of the investment process. How are your clients using it today? I mean, how is that evolving? Because I'm assuming this is an education process for some pretty smart investors, some savvy investors, but maybe they don't understand the logic behind artificial intelligence. How are they using it today, and how do you want them to use it?
Honestly, our first advice to the pioneering clients that come to us and start using it, and there have been an increasing number in the past few weeks, is just dip their toes into it, try it. I think trial and error is very important because I think working with AI is unlike any other software that you would have used before, right? Where does it get data? How does it calculate? How does it reason and so on? Once you get the hang of it, however, it becomes extremely exciting, and you can see people just get engaged with it.
Okay, you grew up in the milieu of Harvard, MIT, and all the fancy people up in Boston. Black-Scholes came out, and I never met Fisher Black, to my great regret. He died tragically early. But what a joy I've had in discussing Myron Scholes and picking up the pieces of 1998. How does a modeling that's new, wrapped around reflexivity, how does this tested model work given substantial leverage shocks, the discontinuities that are brought out by leverage as a pro would use?
So again, I think here, the calculations that the system will do fall back on the traditional statistical methods. It's not reinventing the way you're calculating things or the way you're calculating correlations. What it's able to do, however, is understand the analysis that you're trying to achieve, and then potentially do that analysis in 3 or 4 different ways.
Which side of the log normal curve is this on? I can see you with Schleifer and Rogoff in some PhD ballet going Gaussian to log normal to Poisson distribution. On a vanilla log normal distribution, Colin, I'm doing this for you, it's jargon. On a log normal distribution, the short side's more difficult to manage than the long side. Do you get better alpha pickup shorting the market versus a long market?
Actually, I think it's quite symmetric. It's true that generally when you look at how investors perform in buying versus getting out of positions, they're generally worse at getting out of positions. They're quite good at picking them, but not so good at getting rid of them. They typically do it when they have to. So here the AI can be helpful because it's able to actively, this is what reflexivity does, spot something in the market. Let's say that interest rates are starting to move much faster than they have been. And it'll point to your banking stocks and say, you should pay attention to this because it could be that there is a lot more downside risk than you realize.
This is great. Thank you so much. Jan, please don't be a stranger. Jan Szilagyi with us with Reflexivity. This is a tool that's being used for a lot of sophisticated investors to get out front to create an edge. His work in academics with Ken Rogoff at Harvard is noted. Michael Barr said, I'm all reflexivity with our news in New York City.